Then Mickey and her troops took off running towards him as well. He fired one more time, draining his magazine. He turned the gun and pressed the release, pulling the spent magazine, steam bellowing out, wafting into the air. As he swapped his magazines, the Skibidis seized on the momentary lull and took it to their advantage. They outstretched their necks, seizing two more of the Chinese soldiers. The one grabbing Mickey's ankle before he was yanked away, tripping her and knocking her to the ground. Flat on her stomach, she turned over and sat up just in time to see her soldier dragged away screaming behind his comrade that was taken first. Akan grabbed her by the left shoulder and pulled her up Mickey's legs, struggling and scrambling for footing as they began to run again. Sabrina, in the rear of the group, felt a massive pain in her right ankle, and then a powerful pull sending her face down to the ground. As she took her face out of the dirt and looked forward, she felt the terrifying pull. She was being dragged back into the Skibidis. She felt the helpless terror, unable to turn and bring her gun to bear. Then she heard a shing and the pull stopped. Kuro Silk had sliced the neck of the Skibidi. Sabrina turned over and kicked the still clenched, severed head off of her ankle. She rubbed and examined her boot and ankle. Kuro Silk stood over her, looking down. "It's okay, I'm okay, it didn't bite through my boot," she declared. Kuro Silk knelt down and smacked Sabrina's hand away from her boot. She grabbed Sabrina's ankle and gave it the once-over herself. Finding no puncture marks, she nodded that Sabrina was good. She stood up and grabbed Sabrina by the collar, lifting her up. "Sacre bleu," shouted Sabrina. "Be gentle with me, giantess," as Kuro Silk dragged her away. The last of the group behind Kuro Silk and Sabrina reached the man, but the Skibidis picked one last member off, biting down on one of the jeep soldiers right where the shoulder and neck meet. The look of shock and terror overtook his face as the others watched, and in the same motion, the Skibidi ripped him into the air and back into the lingering smoke and confusion. The man clicked in a new magazine, loaded the first round into the chamber, and began firing again. The previous all happening in those few terrifying split seconds of him exchanging magazines. The group behind him, as he continued cover fire, he stopped. "Over the berm. Over the berm," he shouted his order to them. The group scrambled over the grassy dirt mound and dropped down the other side. He fired a few more bursts before he stopped, holding his gun down and across his chest. In his other hand, he raised up a remote. He smiled at the oncoming toilets as he pressed the button, slowly walking backwards up the berm until he stood on the crest of it. Half a dozen white lines shot up in the sky from behind him, and the others swaying and wiggling in the air as they outstretched over the Skibidis. "Miklek," mumbled Brittany. They were M58 mine-clearing charges. As they began to descend, the man dropped behind the berm, with the others crouching down and covering his ears. The others followed suit. The lines hit the ground, exploding on contact, obliterating the Skibidis, large and small, on the ground in front of them. The ground trembled, and massive smoke and fireballs rose into the sky. The man poked his head over the berm, the others following slowly to take in the scene of massive carnage before them. Shattered bits of porcelain, some large from the massive Skibidis, and charred severed heads and necks, smoking and burnt to a crisp, all in the matter of a single moment. "Ben Wright, Black Ops," he said. "Brittany Blanchard, I'm with the company," she responded. Ben nodded back. Out beyond the sea of death and destruction, the group could hear the angry shouts of the toilets as they began to move once again, pushing through the remains of their now obliterated compatriots. "They're unstoppable," said Romelia. "You have any more line charges?" asked Brittany. "Negative. Those were the last of what I had. They were here when I got here about a week ago. I received orders to use them to start clearing paths in the forest to use as makeshift roads to some building in the direction that you came from," said Ben. "That's where we came from," said Mickey. "That aerial formation was going to fly right overhead. I decided we need to draw it off before the Skibidi Toilets found it," added Brittany. "Well, mission accomplished," responded Ben. "However, you may have put yourselves in a different peculiar situation," he continued. "But maybe you can fill me in on what is actually happening." "Nope, we're in the same boat as you," said Brittany. "We were all either ordered to the site or brought there by someone who was ordered to bring us to the site." "Well, that sucks," Ben replied. The white streak of a contrail traced across the sky. It erupted in a massive explosion in the side of one of the gigantic toilets. Then more contrails smacking into the side of the giant toilet, causing it to groan as it turned to the left and began to crash. The contrails of more missiles exploded on the smaller toilets, destroying them and damaging the transports, causing them to start to crash. The raking of machine gun fire could then be heard pinging into the porcelain toilets.